Hi and welcome. In the first unit, we had a look at the most important sentence structure to communicate your message. In the second unit, we had a look at the best way to organize your sentences as regards amounts of information. In the third unit, we had a look at how to present some aspects of information using tabulation. In this unit, we're going to bring all of those three units together in looking at email structure. We're going to break down an email to identify the most important communicative English points you have to include. Before we go through the rules, let's have a look at the email that we'll be working with today. Pause the video, read the email, and get a good understanding of what's being written about. In case you're not sure, VDR stands for Virtual Data Room and DD stands for Due Diligence. Okay, with that in mind, let's go through the most important elements of an email. 1. The subject line. 2. The salutation. 3. The reason for writing. 4. The presentation of information, if necessary. 5. The call to action. And lastly, 6. The ending. Let's go through these points one by one. 1. The subject line. Busy people get lots of emails, and so the subject line is, in most cases, the first thing the recipient sees when they receive an email. Therefore, to get the recipient to open the email to actually read what you've written, the subject line is the most important part of the email. This is the sales pitch that makes the recipient open the email. The subject line has to be a one-line summary of the whole email, and as such, it has to be accurate and informative. And to make sure it is, it's best to write the subject line at the end when you've written the body of the email. This way, you know which points the subject line should contain. 2. The salutation. If the person you are writing to has a title, use it. For example, Doctor, Professor, and so on. Do not, however, say Mr. Doctor or Mrs. Professor. If you're writing to a man, use Mr. If you're writing to a woman, use Mrs. if you know she's married, Miss if you know she's single, Ms if you are unsure. Modern business convention is to use Ms irrespective of whether you know the woman is married or not. But what about hi and hello, I hear you ask? My approach is that your first contact email should always be formal, that is, follow the rules of letter writing. When you get a response, follow their lead. If they say Dear Simon in response, you can say Dear John. If they say Dear Mr. Porter, respond accordingly. If they say hi or hello, then it's possible to respond in the same way, but for the sake of professionalism and courtesy, I would ask you to think carefully about using hi and hello in the first few emails. Once a relationship of some kind has been established, hi and hello would be okay. The most important thing is if you know to whom you are writing, you should always use their name. I've seen people use the salutation sir or madam, even though they've been writing to that person several times. Why? This is unnecessarily archaic. However, if you don't know to whom you are writing, then the convention is to use dear sir or madam. 3. The reason for writing. In the first sentence of each email, you must explain why you are writing. This must be clear, concise, and to the point. For further information, please refer to the first lesson on the active voice and the second lesson on sentences. By telling the recipient why you're writing in the active voice, they're informed straight away and you're not wasting their time. Get to the point quickly and appropriately. 4. Presentation of information, if necessary. It might be the case that in the email you have to present information, in which case it must be presented in a clear, organized, and logical way. For that, please refer to the lesson on tabulation, which explains how and why. 5. The call to action. In each email, you must state exactly what you want from the recipient. If you are just writing to inform the recipient, this can be covered in the reason for writing. However, If you want the recipient to do something, this must be clearly stated using the appropriate indirect form. For further information about indirect forms, please refer to the grammar lesson on indirect questions. By using an indirect form, you naturally use the active voice and you avoid using implied questions as you are forced to state what you need to happen very clearly. The recipient is then fully informed about what their next steps should be. Lastly, 6, the ending. Your last sentence must always be an offer to help if the recipient has any questions. This is the standard clause that must be included. For example, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to get in touch. As regards finishing an email, if you know to whom you're writing, Mr., Mrs., Doctor, sign off with yours sincerely. If you don't know to whom you're writing, Dear Sir, Madam, sign off with yours faithfully. If a level of business informality has been reached, or the recipient in their email back to you uses best regards, kind regards, or regards, you can use those too. Do not use BR or KR. Okay. There's a lot of information there. I would ask you to watch this part of the video again if you want to make sure you've understood all of my rules. If you're happy with the rules, let's move on and see how we can apply those rules to our example email. On the next slide, you'll see the email before and after. The slide is annotated to explain the changes that have been made in line with these rules. Now you've had the chance to see how the email has been changed, I would like you to attempt to change the email in the question below. Before you do that, however, I must explain one or two things about emails in general. Emails, unlike letters, do not have a standard set of rules. People see emails in different ways. Some see emails as formally as letters. Some see emails as an informal means of communication. As such, you might see my rules as too formal or rigid, and I fully accept this. What I've done is I've given you the rules on how to communicate your message in the clearest way possible and to make sure you include all the necessary parts to make the recipient fully informed. There are lots of other things I could say about email practice. For example, using the subject line alone to convey a message and leaving the email body blank, or not including any salutation or ending, or using text speak or other abbreviations, but these are outside the remit of this video. What I have done, however, is give you a whole list of resources below which also advise on how to write emails.